How do you judge a movie?
This is a great question because I think everyone judges a movie differently. A lot of people will judge a movie based on its visual style, its score, its production value. For me, it's kind of has to be the complete package. And I think it starts with characters. Characters and story are key. You can have the most beautiful looking film in the world, but if I watch a movie and the story doesn't connect with me, and I don't care about any of the characters, it doesn't matter how good the score is, doesn't matter how good the costumes are, doesn't matter how great the cinematography is. The story sucks, the movie sucks. And I think that's something that I struggle with a lot nowadays when it comes to films. Because if you've noticed, there's become this very bad pattern in the industry where everyone has said, visually stunning. Everything's visually stunning, cinematic, no matter what it is. And you're like, you watch these movies and it's like, what's with these characters? Like, why are they underdeveloped? Why are they like doing these? Like, what's the reasoning behind their actions? And that's what I focus on. So like for me, characters and story are key to any movie. And it doesn't matter to me, it doesn't matter if a movie doesn't have like the most, I don't know, spectacle of direction. But if you have a story that connects with viewers, that will elevate the movie almost in every way. Sure, you can say like, oh, if so-and-so directed this movie, don't you think it would have been a little bit better? Sure. But I still think it comes down to those two key elements of you have to have characters that are going to resonate with an audience, and you have to have a story that's going to connect with an audience. And that's all it is to it, because nowadays, visual movies are a dime a dozen. Every Marvel movie is a visually stunning movie. Every DC movie is a visually stunning movie. Every Star Wars movie, every animation, all of that stuff, visually stunning. It's what goes into the meat and potatoes of like those characters and the story that's being told that makes it worthy of your time or not. Okay.
Elvis, visually stunning, but excellent characters.
Yes.
Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. And I have to say with Elvis, it's a balancing of tone in a weird way too, because I know a lot of people are criticizing Tom Hanks' character in that movie.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, a lot of people are criticizing it because it's kind of very over the top. It's almost like a Dr. Evil type villain, like I'm so menacing. And the way that Baz Luhrmann shoots certain scenes with him, it's kind of almost like he's going like, oh yes, Elvis is mine.
Right.
So I watched some of this and I'm kind of like, okay, like this is a little over the top here. But when you go into like a rock star life, they hit upon so much in this 2.5 hour runtime of, you know, his stuff down in Memphis and his impact and his drug addiction, his women abuse, his claim to fame of like being inspired by the music in the Black community. There's so much that they're trying to cram in here that in a weird way, I almost found it refreshing that Tom Hanks was in this movie being like this character that was like over the top, because it took away from how serious the rest of the movie was. And I think you have Austin Butler literally putting in a performance of a lifetime in this movie. Like it's been such a long time. I was thinking about this. I think it was like Ray Charles with Ray was the last time that I seen an actor totally like just become another person. And this is not like prosthetics, like, you know, Gary Oldman in Darkest Hour, like his great performance, don't get me wrong. But it's the prosthetics, right? You forget it's him because of all this makeup and hair. With this, it's just like the voice, it's the commitment, just like it was with Jamie Foxx. And you watch this movie and you just, again, you fall in love with the characters, right? Austin Butler becomes Elvis. And the movie's about Elvis, and you fall in love with that character and you like the journey. And it's like, critics are like, it's overlooking certain things in his life, like these biopics that we all know nowadays. You have to have rights to tell this story. And there's going to be very few people who are going to let you shit on that person. They're not going to say, oh yeah, you know what? Show how terrible he was when like family members are still alive. They're not going to do that. Just like we saw with Bohemian Rhapsody. The band didn't want to go through all the dark stuff in there. They touched upon it, just like they do in Elvis. But it does glance over things. But the bottom line is, you still have a character and you're telling a story about fame and fortune and like this love of music, right? And a love of like performing and what it is to feel the crowd and wanting to travel around the world. And, you know, sadly, Elvis never got to do that. He only got to do it within the States, and because of stories that we got to hear in this movie. But it was great because you connected with the character and you understood it's a dreamer movie, right? Elvis was a dreamer. And those are the movies that I think for me are the ones that I resonate with the most, because those are the ones that are kind of universal in their messaging, which is why when you see a movie like Elvis, people will clap at the end of it when you go see it with a regular audience, because it gives them this level of hope. But at the same time, Elvis is not a happy movie. Like at the end of it, it's kind of sad, but it gives you that full meal. You get that like the climb to fame, the life of fame, the bad side of fame, and then like trying to find your voice within there, and then the tragedy of what it is. And so I think it's a really well-structured movie as a whole. Again, not perfect, but very few movies are.
Right, and in going into the movie, it was moving very fast. I thought, oh no, this is going to be one of these rushed biopics.
Yeah.
Visually stunning as it
Yeah.
was, but something about it hooked me in, and I didn't feel like it was rushed. But in the beginning, I wasn't sure if that's where we were going.
I think that's because it's Baz Luhrmann, right? I mean, Baz Luhrmann as a filmmaker, very hit or miss. And as much as, again, you can have visual style, and you can never take that away from Baz Luhrmann. Baz Luhrmann has a very specific look and feel to all his movies, the way he incorporates modern music with old school music. It's his signature style. And what I was worried about with Elvis was, I thought, like Great Gatsby, where it overtook the movie, right? Like it was so much of like modern music in there, and it was so over stylized that you kind of forgot, like, this is a great piece of literature with Great Gatsby, and that's all like lost in the spectacle. But with Elvis, I think it's weird, because I think I saw an interview with him that he wasn't like the biggest Elvis fan in the world, right? Like he wasn't, like you would think when you're doing a biopic, you would pick someone who's like obsessed. And I think he admitted that he really wasn't obsessed. He knew of him and he was kind of fascinated with him, but he wasn't like, oh my God, I have to do this. Like, this is not like his dream project, but like he somehow made it into his dream project. And I think that's kind of captured in Austin Butler, right? It's like, I love movies where they find an actor who has really not been taken seriously before, and you put him in this world and you create this story around him, and everyone, just like people who hate Elvis, can say at the very least that Austin Butler didn't give at least a good performance. Some people might be like me, where they're extreme and go like, this is one of the best performances that I've seen in like 10 years. But most people would say that at least it's a good performance. People are mixed on the movie, but the performance. So I think Baz Luhrmann really does, with this one, I think he understood that it was more about the story and more about the character than it was about the visual. He wanted to create his sense of style. He had to put it in there, which is why if you watch the first half of that movie, it's much more of a traditional Baz Luhrmann movie with everything he does thrown at you. But the second half of it is way more of just kind of like, okay, this is the story. This is where like things, where the shit hits the fan, things are going to get real here, and we're going to focus on that. And it really is kind of uneven, to be truthful. But I think that second half is so strong that it actually makes up for the first half.
Right, and I was worried about that. Would the payoff in the end wane because everything was up front? And would you say that's almost a smart thing for a filmmaker not to be too obsessed with someone's life story because it's going to be biased if they go in sort of neutral?
Yeah, I mean, this ties into so many different things. I think being a fan of someone is very difficult now. Because again, going back to the internet, it's almost like, oh, you're the go-to. So this is no surprise to anyone who knows me. I'm a big Kristen Stewart fan, and I'm a big Kristen Stewart supporter. And I have been since Speak when it premiered at Sundance. But I can admit that not every movie she does or has been a part of is good. Sometimes she's not good in the movie. Sometimes the movie's not good. Sometimes she's the best part of the movie. Sometimes the movie's great and everything's great. As a filmmaker, I agree. I think it's really hard because if you really idolize someone, it can go either one or two ways. It can go so extreme where you're just like the ultimate fanboy, fangirl, and you're just like making this love letter that is just like, oh my God, I idolize this person. I love them so much. And then if you have on the other end of that, if you have someone who doesn't know anything about the person, you run the risk of kind of not being accurate and not feeling the heart. Because biopics, in a weird way, need that middle ground. You have to love someone on a certain extent, but you also have to realize that they're flawed and that they're not perfect and that they have dark sides. And that's, I think, what really stood out to me about this. And it even Rocket Man, right? Rocket Man, Elton John was so involved with it, right? But Elton John's the type of celebrity who's not afraid of what people think because he hosts Oscar parties. He's like one of the most beloved people in the industry, so he's not really afraid to show his dark side of things. But is Queen afraid of showing their dark side? Probably, because they're still touring and they're still making money. Freddie's not here anymore, but they're still part of it. So they don't want anyone to kind of see something and kind of view it and go like, oh, I don't know about those guys anymore, right? And that's where I think you have this really fine line of everything, right? You have how much do family members have this involvement in this movie? Are they controlling it too much that it's not accurate enough? And then do you have a filmmaker who's capable of telling the story that it doesn't feel like a documentary? Like where it's actually going to be, to me, documentaries are so one-sided, majority of them, right? You're watching a documentary and you're kind of like, okay, this is like set out to be like, tell me like Michael Moore. He hates Trump. I know you hate Trump. No. So like you're
not
watching,
a surprise.
You're watching this movie, you're watching this documentary, and you're not surprised. No one who likes Trump's gonna watch this movie. So like, who are you making this movie for? But when you go to biopics too, I think that it has that problem too, because you want to learn something when you watch a biopic that you don't always need the clean and shiny version of it. You want some darkness, but there's a balance. And I don't know. I feel like biopics are always getting such like mixed reactions from critics, and rightfully so, because they either go too heavy or not heavy enough. And there's no in between with all of them. And one of my favorite movies of recent years, and I enjoyed the fact that it was more of the spectacle, is The Greatest Showman. Because The Greatest Showman is not trying to be this biopic, right? They literally made up characters in the movie. It was just supposed to be a musical that's fun and entertaining. And then when I'm reading critics, I was like, they didn't show the dark side of his life. I'm like, At no point did this movie say that it was going to be this hard-hitting tale about this. It was supposed to be a lighthearted thing. So I understand why some people watch Elvis and they criticize of how they glossed over things and how they watch Bohemian Rhapsody. But at the end of the day, these movies are appealing to the masses. What we as film critics sometimes want is not what the studio wants, nor what audiences want.
That's a good point, because in the theater was a couple that could not stay off their phone. They were online shopping, but they eventually put it away.
Right.
So obviously it got their attention enough from close to the beginning. And then there was another family that was at one point standing up, just talking. But we were able to finish the movie as a group. So very diverse group that was in there, but somehow their attention, as much as they kind of wanted to squirm and do things, was kept. And I agree on showing the different sides is difficult in the film. One film that I'm kind of a broken record on is this John DeLorean movie, which was a movie within a movie. So it was several independent filmmakers who were hoping to make a documentary on him. And it was a narrative, it was his family members, and they all came together to kind of give different sides of the story of how it transpired. And I thought that was fascinating. I hadn't seen too many like that.
Yeah.
So, and Alec Baldwin plays John DeLorean, and he's, as himself, contemplating what would John have done in this scene and things. So that seemed like it was more of an all-around representation. But I get it. We only want to see sort of one version of the person.
Yeah, I mean, and it's all based on who you talk to, right? So the biggest issue with biopics now, right, is that you have the movie that the studio wants, you have the movie that the director wants, you have the movie that the audience wants, you have the movie that the critics want. And it's very, very rare that all four of those people are going to agree. And I think that's a huge problem, which is why I think biopics always get such a mixed reaction, is because it leans in one, like Rocket Man was leaning into the dark side, and because it's Elton John, it did really well. But it didn't do as well as a Bohemian Rhapsody, because that leaned into more of the spectacle and more of the music. You have 30 minutes at the end where you have that, what is that, aid? I forgot the name of it. But they have the aid scene, live aid scene at the end. And they're just performing. I mean, that is still probably one of the best scenes in a movie in the last decade, because it's musical spectacle. It's Queen, why we love Queen. And Rocket Man, even though they kind of had like almost like a Broadway approach to it of like, here's a musical number, we're going to bust into a musical song here, and then we're going to go through a set and blah, 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 blah. It's great. But people really love those moments where it's just like 30 minutes of like, this is what I want. This is what I want. And again, critics, not so much. Audiences, yes. Same with musicals. People want, they want to feel like they're watching a stage musical on the big screen. And sometimes those numbers are not big enough. They feel very small. So yeah, it's really trying. I don't envy people who are doing these jobs anymore, because you're appealing to so many different people. And it's really difficult now because of what we talked about earlier, social media. Everyone has a voice and everyone has something to say. So what one person might love, another person hates. And it depends on who picks that up and who runs that as a headline as to whether or not that movie will sink or float.